Uh, okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure we were recording because we do want to make all of these webinars available on our website. And there are some from last year up on the website if you feel like watching any of those. So today I'll be focusing on our work at the Mill Pond Overlook. It was probably the main site we were focused on last year for our group stewardship projects. A little slow. Okay, so the Mill Pond Overlook property is located off of Stage Harbor Road that runs between Stage Harbor Road and the Mitchell River. It's 9 acres. The majority of it was given to the foundation by Esther Underwood Johnson, with an additional acre or so given by Peggy Davis. CCF opened a new trail on the property in 2022. It's about a half a mile out and back, like if you do the whole out and back. And there's a bench at the end with peaks of the Mitchell River. It's better at this time of year when all the leaves are down. You can see the old village and the Bridge Street Bridge. The property consists of both salt marsh and upland. Unfortunately, the upland is pretty heavily invaded by invasives. So we're chipping away at that in very small pieces. Most of our work, let me go back a slide 1 second. So we have this panhandle into the property that's 30 feet wide, and that's where most of our work, aside from the trail building, has focused so far. And this is what the entrance to that panhandle looked like in 2007. It's very heavily populated with privet, porcelainberry, and other invasives. And here's a look from the bottom of the panhandle, looking up towards Stage Harbor Road, while we were working on cutting the trail. So you can see it's a big tangle of porcelainberry, bittersweet, multiflora rose, honeysuckle. So here's what it looked like once we'd broken the trail through, but we hadn't really made any effort to remove the invasives yet. But in the first year after opening the trail, or it might have been before we opened the trail officially, I can't remember now. We started some replanting on the panhandle. We wanted to do a native restoration here. We also wanted to provide some buffer to our neighbor and for us from our neighbor. So you'll see this is just a example of a planting plan. This only covers one part of the trail. We had plans for additional portions of the panhandle. I just wanted to show one example. You'll see this gray cross represents privet. We have left some privet temporarily, kind of to because it's providing a good buffer between the trail and the neighbor. We will remove it over time as native plants that we put in grow. So you'll see inkberry holly was one of the primary shrubs we used. Sweet pepper bush is represented with these red hexagons. We're also attempting to grow some witch hazel, but we've had to replace those a few times because some rodent has really enjoyed chewing the trunks. But so this as I said, was just one portion of the trail we worked on. So here's some examples of the planting we did that first season. the next year, so primarily in the first season, we were working on the left-hand side of the trail if you're walking in from the road. And the next year, we decided to tackle a portion of the left-hand side, and this is what the area looked like. So we still needed to remove the vines and multiflora rose, and some other invasives. And often when you do this, you, like, it might be a multi-year process before you're ready to plant. Here we've kind of taken out the invasives and put plants in right away, which has been working fine in this, at this site. We've been grubbing out the roots.
How do you turn the volume?
So this year, that year we took off a little, so this was in 2023, we took off a little bit smaller of a project. And you can, so we removed those invasives and put in a couple of cedars, high bush blueberries, sweet pepper bush, and shad bush, and a couple of black huckleberry. So that's what that planting looks like. So this was the plan we were working on this past season, and drawn by Kathy Weston. Everything that you see in black pen is already existing there. A lot of it's the natives we have already planted, although you'll still see privet. So one of our efforts this year, we were adding in some extra shrubs where we felt we needed more. But we also decided to do some ground cover planting, and there's still a heavy invasive weed pressure there. Lots of privet seedlings, garlic, mustard, and other weeds. So we're trying to give them competition. We planted over 100 strawberries. That was our primary ground cover, and added in a few other plants for color and interest. The other component of our work this year was installing rain gardens, and I'll talk about that more in depth in a moment. So this is continuing down the trail. Again, we were adding in more shrubs. Some of these we didn't have enough room in our budget, or the plants weren't available yet, but the majority of these we did add. And again, we put in some, well, I don't think we got to it in this area yet, but under the winterberry hollies here, we added shrubs and strawberries again to compete with the non-native weeds. So this shows some of the planting we did this year. So as I said, we planted over 100 strawberries, which we had done a trial planting the year before with some strawberries we removed from out in front of the Mayo house here, and they seem to like the conditions well and be spreading. This is a sweet pepper bush on the right-hand side of the trail. Again, this is another view of the right-hand side of the trail. We continued our work from 2023. We continued clearing down on the left-hand side of the trail. We added in blueberry bushes, sweet pepper bush, and some alternate leaved dogwoods. This is baneberry. This was sort of another plant we added for interest and competition. This is the alternate leaf dogwood I just mentioned, and one reason why we introduced more alternate leaf dogwoods is that there's already one growing on the trail. One of the few natives that was already established there. So this slide is kind of a shout out to those natives that are already existing, and that we're trying to encourage. So we've we've cleared vines off the alternate leaf dogwood and cut some privet around it so it gets more light. And I love this little patch of sensitive fern that's on either side of the trail in this one, like, 30-foot stretch. But one of the main focuses this year was solving a water problem we had. As I mentioned, the panhandle where the trail starts on is only 30 feet wide. And we also didn't want to be walking like right next to our neighbor's fence. So we didn't have much room to direct the trail. We basically had to go straight down the slope. And what we were noticing in the first few years is that water was running straight down the trail. Some of it coming in off the road, some of it just coming in from the surrounding land. We had laid wood chips on. So this is dramatic looking because there were wood chips on the trail, but you can see how the water would run down and it was pushing the wood chips to the side. And increasingly water management is going to have to be a focus. This map shows the change in precipitation in different areas between 1901 and 2023. And you can see in the Northeast, precipitation has increased over that time period. And the severity of heavy rainfall has also been increasing in New England. And I bet you've just noticed this, without looking at charts in the past, 10 or so years. I know I've noticed that we'll get these very heavy rainfalls that I didn't notice so frequently in the past. For example, this September, our rain gardens got tested in like a 7-inch rainfall. So total precipitation on the heaviest 1% of days in New England has increased by 60%. The 5-year maximum daily precipitation has increased by 18%, and the annual maximum daily precipitation has increased by 14%. So this is a challenge for us taking care of trails. And so we did a lot of learning this year. So we decided to install water bars that would direct water to rain gardens. So you probably have seen water bars in different forms on trails. Sometimes it's just kind of an indentation in the trail that runs at an angle and directs the water to the side of the trail. Sometimes you'll see kind of rocks sticking up to form a barrier to the water, again, directing the water at an angle off the main trail. This property, we've always wanted it to, it is not ADA accessible, but we've wanted it to be a fairly comfortable walk for most people. So we didn't want anything like sticking up that you'd have to step over. And so we decided to use a method like is shown in these pictures. We use 6x6 posts that we dug into the ground. So those form a barrier to the water, and the water then needs to run along the post. And we dug a ditch at the end for the water to flow into, which would then direct the water to the rain garden. And we dug a trench behind the where we installed the post that we filled with gravel, into which the water could infiltrate easily. So as I said, we use these in combination with rain gardens. Rain gardens are a depression in the ground. They're vegetated with plants that can can withstand both dry and wet conditions, you know, because they're not, it kind of depends on what the weather does. They're not always going to be inundated by rain. And you direct water into it, so that the water can take its time and infiltrate into the soil. This removes pollutants in the process, and it can infiltrate back into the groundwater. This is as opposed to, you know, for example, here with the house, and it's in the person's front yard, the water may have just run off onto the road and run into a water body without being treated. So Kathy Weston was our designer of what would be planted in the gardens. And she made tables like this. So we ended up installing 3 rain gardens, and she came up with a planting plan for each. So you'll see, for example, each plant, she depicted when it's in bloom, and the color of this bar shows what color the flower is. So Slender Mountain Mint has a white flower and is typically in bloom in this area between July and August. She wanted to make sure that we had something flowering, that we didn't have any gaps in the flowering, so that at least one thing was flowering each month between May and September. And she also wanted a variety of colors of blooms. And if anyone's interested, we did make a table for these rain garden plants, showing this information that we could email to you. So we got the help of AmeriCorps Cape Cod to start implementing our water bar plan. I forgot to mention they were also instrumental in us cutting the trail back in 2022. So you can see we're doing the process I talked about. We dug trenches so that we could install the 6x6 post and then fill behind it with gravel. And right here is the ditch. So the water is supposed to be directed into the ditch, and then, you know, it has one chance here to flow into this rain garden, and then further down the hill, there's a second rain garden. So here's what it looked like after our day of work with AmeriCorps. I'm standing kind of at the bottom of the hill looking up towards the street. Preparing the rain gardens was a ton of work. My volunteers weren't always very happy with me, but they did a great job. So for each rain garden, we had to dig down about 6 inches. Interestingly, at this site, the soils are very clayey and they don't drain well. Of course, like the one place we want to dig rain gardens, we would have to clay and not sand. So we had to amend the soil. We dug down 6 inches. We put 6 to 8 inches. We put in a layer of about 2 inches of gravel at the bottom. And then we needed to refill it with a mix of some of the soil we took out, sand and mulch, to make it more permeable soil, faster draining than the clay soil that was there. So all the steps are depicted here. We're digging. You can see we've already put the gravel in, and we're working on mixing the soil components. And here we completed the front rain garden. I'll go back slide 2. We also had to build a berm around the rain gardens, because you'll see in pictures later, like when we got that 7-inch rainstorm, they need to be able to hold a few inches of water. After all that hard work, we finally got to plant. So this is the front rain garden. You can see we have some ferns. We did put in a few shrubs. These are swamp azalea, and there's flowers in the front. This is just a small subset of the flowers we planted. This flower here, I was unfamiliar with before we did this project. This is, I think it's called Downy Skullcap. I actually was looking up the other day. I think its range is technically only to New York, but that's fairly close for our purposes. And I do remember it had a long bloom period, so I enjoyed that flower. This is cardinal flower. I have seen this on the Cape, growing in Frostfish Creek, and a real treat. Shortly after we planted this, I saw a hummingbird visiting the flowers. This is bone set, which is a volunteer I regularly find. Well, we purchase this plant, but I do regularly find it volunteering at our properties. So it's something that I regularly see on Cape Cod. Behind it, you can't see very well, but we have swamp rose mallow, but that's also something I've seen in this area, in a little wetland off of Inlet Road. So I encourage you to visit next year. I like winter and I've been enjoying this winter weather, but putting together this slideshow is like, I'm getting excited for seeing these flowers come back up next year and seeing the rain gardens fill in a little more. So Kathy Weston came out during the 7-inch rainstorm to take a few pictures of how the rain gardens were performing. This is the front rain garden. You can see it's holding quite a bit of water. We actually have like a little swale running ditch type thing running from capturing some of the runoff from the road, so that it wouldn't run down our trail. Also, we were also trying to divert some water that we noticed was running across the Atwood Museum's driveway. We haven't gotten all of it yet, but we're working on it. This is the steepest part of our trail. The middle picture shows the steepest part of that portion of the trail. And I was very happy to see no like channeling in the trail, which was saying our water bars were working well. There was a lot of debris. I think that was probably, we had a weeding session right before, and we tend to throw our weeds in the trail to dry out and die. And this is our middle rain garden, and you can see the water running into it from the trail. So we were pretty happy with the performance. There is still some tweaking we need to do, grading in different places, maybe changing the ditch a little bit. But we're a lot better than we were at the beginning of the season. So now this is just a look ahead to what we'll be up to this year. As I said, we didn't get around to planting all these shrubs yet, so we'll be finishing that. The underplanting here didn't happen last year. We will be doing the underplanting for competition. And then in this area, all these little dots are like a representation of privet and other invasive shrubs. So we'll be focusing on clearing that area and adding native shrubs there. We've decided to keep this patch of goldenrod, which was naturally occurring, because it forms a pretty good hedge. Goldenrod can be a bit aggressive or a lot aggressive in disturbed areas. We've been weeding it out some other places, but we wanted to leave it as a feature here. These plants were added already last year. When we get to this point in the trail, we start having an invasive thistle, which spreads by its rhizomes, by the root. And so if we just start digging around, we'll actually end up chopping up its rhizomes and causing a bigger problem. So we want to be careful with how we proceed here. I actually didn't realize that thistle was around, and when we built the trail, we disturbed this area. So we're still working on getting the thistle in control around these shrubs we put in, and we're thinking of maybe adding some like wet meadow type species as competition and for additional screening down here. So as I said, we have that kind of clay soil that holds water well. And we've learned it gives us a chance to plant some shrubs that like their feet wet here. And we had a bet, these are 2 bayberries that are surviving, but we had probably at least 6 planted here. They have not seemed to like the wetter conditions. So anyways, with the thistle, I think we're going to clear the above ground vegetation and then try smothering this area for a year or 2 with black fabric, which is a strategy we've used at other properties, kind of starving the thistle, and then we can evaluate whether we can, we've achieved enough success to move forward with planting there. We also we've started clearing under a couple of kind of like showcase trees. This is a Coosa dogwood. It's not native, but it's also not invasive. They're not spreading through the property. They were planted here at some point in time. So this is in June, this picture here. It is beautiful in flower. It's like one of the biggest Coosa dogwoods I've probably ever seen. So we did start to clear under it this fall. It was basically, privet and honeysuckle, which are non-native shrubs. There are these skinnier plants here are the small trees are shadbush. That's another one of the like few invasives I do still see, or few natives that I still see throughout this property. So we opened up around those as well. And we would like to underplant. Kathy's still working on choosing the exact plants that we'll try here, but we really need competition because there's like thousands of privet seedlings. So we'll probably do a mix of like understory, like the ground cover planting we did. I don't know if we'll use strawberries here, but something like that, as well as shrubs that are common in this area, like low bush blueberry and or black huckleberry. So stay tuned for that. So we're going to keep plugging away on this property and watching our work evolve. We host in the growing season, we host weekly volunteer group projects, sometimes twice a week. If you're interested in participating in those projects, you can reach out to CCF. You can sign up through our email or just, sign up for volunteering opportunities through our website. There's an volunteer interest form, or just email us. And we could get you on the email list for that. But I'm just happy to see you walking the trail and enjoying the changes in the area. And just if you want to, in general, stay connected with what we're doing, you can visit our website. We just launched a new website. Follow us on Facebook, sign up for our emails on the website, and as I discussed, we're always interested in hosting more volunteers. So now I will open up for some questions if anyone has any. No questions? Wait, in the chat, let's see. Okay. All right, doesn't look like we have any questions, but thank you everyone for coming out to this presentation, and we look forward to offering our next 7 webinars and hope you can join us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Julie. That was very nice. What a great job.
Thanks, Carol.